Welcome back to another edition of Manspeqtiveafrica, the show that you love, airing every Wednesday on KTN at 8 p.m. And of course, we are on YouTube, where we premiere every Thursday morning. And of course, today is yet another conversation with a fantastic guest. I've met him before once. I know he doesn't remember, but I'll remind him on set. And we're coming live from Kayana Create, a fantastic community of women entrepreneurs. This is a space where you can come and plug in and get all the support that you need. They are supporting over 250 women, and they've done they have over 10,000 footprints of change, of in terms of impact for the work that they do. And of course, they have a co-working space. You can come and join this space. And of course, you can come and have your events here. And if you're just a woman who's looking for, you're a female entrepreneur who's looking for other women who are doing the sort of work that you do, this is the place that you can come and plug in. Mr. Joe Okello, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
We met the very first time when I was at Capital FM, and you was the chair of CBM Kenya, and we had gotten into partnership to do some charity work with Sabatia Eye Hospital.
Yes.
And I was a journalist who was sent to go and cover the story in Sabatia.
Oh, okay.
Then with this gentleman called Limeri and
Eric, yes.
And another gentleman who's now doing a lot of work around fatherhood.
Yes, Mongera.
Mongera, yes, exactly. And I met you.
Okay.
And so yesterday when I saw that I'm interviewing you, it was such a pleasant surprise.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So perhaps our audience might not know who you are, or some already know, but it would be nice to hear from your mouth.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Joe Okello, and I'm the chairman of the association. I'm the chairman and the co-founder of the Association of Family Business Enterprises. Okay. It's an association that represents the interests of family businesses in Kenya. Okay. And we have plans to expand beyond Kenya to other countries in the continent.
All right.
Why we started the association is because family businesses are the backbone of the economy in Kenya. And in fact, they are the backbone of many economies globally. In Kenya, we estimate they contribute between 60 to 80% of the GDP.
Wow.
And about 40 to 50%, even if not higher, of the labor complement.
Really?
Yes. So family businesses are very important, but we see that they have certain challenges. And by bringing family businesses together, we hope to learn from each other and also get in resource partners to come in to help family businesses go beyond the current generation so they can be transferred to next generation.
Okay. It must be very interesting that you chose this sort of association to co-found it and of course to be its chairperson. What's your history with family business?
Okay, so I've been in family businesses for most of my adult and working life.
Yeah.
My parents started a school in the late 70s called Makini School.
Wow.
And it's a business that started in our home with 8 students or 8 pupils, and grew over the years. And it was in the control of the family business, in the control of the family for 40 years. I worked in Makini for about 20 of those 40 years, so I have a lot of experience of working in family businesses. I have worked in businesses outside the family business.
Yeah.
And one of the businesses I worked for is a global multinational, which is also coincidentally a family business. Yeah. So I have a lot of...
What's this global organization or global business? The one that you're saying you've worked with, which happens to be family owned. You don't want to mention the name? Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, it's a company that I worked for quite a period of time.
All right.
Yes.
It's fine. Well, I was reading your story. I found a lady called Pat Okello.
Yes.
Who speaks very highly of you.
Oh, that's very fortunate of me.
Yeah, like in all her interviews. Yes. I don't know are you aware that she speaks highly of you? And who's that to you?
Well, I am pleasantly surprised. Okay. Because she's my wife.
Oh, she's your wife?
Yes, so it helps.
Okay. And she's the one who runs this Kayana.
Kayana Create is her baby, and it's her passion. It's what she preoccupies her most of her time.
Let's start that conversation from there. Maybe you have dealt with so many entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs.
Yes.
What would you say is the role of a supportive husband in the outcome of their business or just their well-being generally, or lack thereof and the impact of it?
Yeah, so I think that a supportive husband should affirm their partner in their endeavors, in whatever they select to do. Affirmation is very important, and also not to overstep one's boundaries. So I've been very careful to realize that this is what she does, and I will lend my support when
Needed.
necessary, when needed. Exactly. I think the success of anybody, even if the roles were reversed, for any partner is to really support, because otherwise business or enterprise can be a very lonely journey. And if you don't get support at home, where you'd expect to receive it, then it's even more of a challenge, expecting to receive it outside. So I think, just affirmation, support, and encouragement.
There's a story she says about how, she quit her job in Nairobi and to join you in Mombasa.
Yes.
And how, you having this experience in running, in being a part of a family business, coming from an entrepreneurial family, sort of like gave her the wings to fly and to believe in that, Well, perhaps briefly, without really delving in her story, you can tell us from your perspective,
So at the time of when I was getting married to Patricia, I lived in Mombasa. I was living and working in Mombasa, and she was based in Nairobi. So I even came from Mombasa to Nairobi, where we had our wedding. But on the advice of my father, he said that when you start a marriage, it's good for both parties, for the couple to stay together. Because they don't really know each other. They may think they do, but until they live together, it's the early years of that marriage the success of the marriage can really depend on how the early years go. And I thought that was very sound advice. So she worked in Nairobi, and I worked and lived in Mombasa for about 3 months, whereafter she resigned from her job, which was a big ask, especially because she had a career that she saw had a lot of potential, and she was interested in it. And she came to live with me in Mombasa. And I told her that, we discussed and thought that maybe in Mombasa she should pick up and start a job or start doing something with the skills or interests that she has. And indeed she did. She started a company called Willard Production Limited. And she started it from the home on one computer that we bought through. Those days, computers were a lot of money. I think PCs were about 150 to 200,000 shillings. So we bought it through a SACCO loan, and the Willard Production Limited was born. And that was in the year 2001, possibly 2001. And it grew, from as a solopreneur, if you like, a one-person business, to a company that has even spawned other companies. So I saw that even though she did not have an entrepreneurial background, she definitely had an entrepreneurial spirit, and she had the traits that would help her succeed. And I always tell her that I think she's an even better entrepreneur than I am.
I like that. And I was actually quite inspired by her story when I was listening to it. And I think we live in a world where now it's very difficult to find women who speak highly of their husbands. It's sort of like it's become like an outlier. Like what we've normalized is that, I was battered, this has happened. And there are many, many issues of gender-based violence. So to hear to hear a woman who really talks about a supportive husband, how, you don't mind going to games with the kids and to hold the home and to do all these things despite all your busy schedule. You've not relegated some of this responsibility to her. I think was a breath of fresh air. Where are you getting that from? That being supportive is something you saw at home?
Definitely, yes. Both my parents were both gainfully employed when they started McKinney School. And then they both ended up working in the school, although my father had a number of varied interests. And I saw him give a lot of support to my mother in her endeavor, because she worked for a bank, and then she got a job in a bank that was a continental role. So it was quite a senior position, which made her move out of the country, although we were older. My siblings and I were in university or in around then. And so she then, I saw my father lend a lot of support to her in her career. And I think that she would attribute at least some of her success to the fact that she got support from her husband.
From her husband.
Yeah.
And when we were off camera, I asked you whether the name Okello means anything in your culture.
Yeah, and you even went ahead and told me what it means. So you go ahead and say it.
So in my culture, Okello means the one who comes after the twins.
Yeah.
You
know. I would like to investigate what my father was named for. I know my sister would know, and probably my brother. But I am hopeful to, considering capturing my father's father's life in the form of a memoir.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I'm going to bring about, find out who this man is and how he got named Okello. Yes.
Okay. So a memoir. Why a memoir? And why do you want to do it? What was the significance of this?
I think so that my father passed away 20 years ago.
Okay.
And he would have had he had 7 grandchildren, and I think because only 2 were born at the time of his demise, it would be good for them to know who he was in the form of a book, to be able to read about him and his life. He led a very interesting and full life, but he was a very understated and humble man. So I think it would be good for him, to be at least remembered through his, in the form of a book, by his family, friends, and anyone who's interested to knowing more about him. There's a large fraternity of people who've gone through the Makini school system, and I'm sure they would also want to have an interest about one of the founders of this institution that he started with my mother.
Yeah, my wife was a top student at your school. And she's very fond of Makini.
Good, so you chose well.
Yeah.
Or she chose. I don't know.
Hapa naona nikaa yeye alichagua. It's not bad. I think sometimes we would also, choose and we think we're in charge, but really.
No, yes.
Yeah, so but do you have any what memories do you have of your father?
Oh, I have many memories. He was a very hardworking man, very principled, and but he was also very full of life, and he was a very, very selfless person. So fond memories. We just commemorated 20 years, as I said, last month in November, and so I was fortunate to have a father like the one I had.
Yeah. I want to get a bit more, because I think we're living in a world where this word daddy wounds and daddy issues has become such a mainstream language. It seems like everybody was wounded by their father. So to hear a story of, my father was just good, almost feels like an outlier, I'm not saying that it's perfect, but
no, exactly. Yeah. Nobody is perfect.
Nobody is perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And of course, growing up, we had our own perceptions of our father, because my dad was, he was a very forward thinker, but he was also he also had very traditional, or very, maybe not the word traditional. Some of his principles were,
conservative.
Yes, they were quite conservative. So he was typical of the dad of that generation, where I like to joke that we feared and loved.
In equal measure.
Or in some sort of proportion.
It was nice. And I think I think if we look at that, because I think also my dad might have slightly younger,
but from the same generation.
But from the same generation, there was a colonial occupation in this country. There was World War I, where either our grandfathers went to fight in Burma or whatever. Then there's World War II. So there's a whole lot of history happening in their lives that eventually forms how their fathers. Have you ever thought about this and made sense of this?
Definitely. And we always look, when we look at how the generation, Gen Zs are, and my generation, which I think would be Gen X.
Yeah.
And we see the difference in attitude, and you could argue that our generation is living some sort of trauma that was handed over to us by our parents' generation, which, of course, they got from this turmoil of colonialism and to independence, and for many of them being the first ones to fend for themselves and for their family.
And to pay taxes.
And being migrants into this city. You know, many of them were not born or raised in Nairobi. They're the ones who came to find a new life, as it were, in Nairobi.
Yeah, my father was a police officer. Okay. And he went to Kiganjo, I think, just a few years post-independence. Okay. And of course, he told me that the way they were taught is that discipline is first. Human beings are not naturally disciplined. That you first use force, then when they become disciplined, then you let them be. You know, and you realize that this is the logic of many of our parents who grew up in that era. Yeah. That discipline was not naturally acquired. That was something that was to be instilled through very severe forms sometimes.
Yes,
you know? And it wasn't come from a bad place, because sometimes we look at them and we say like, wow, what a brutal dad. My mother was not available, I wasn't loved or hugged and stuff like that, you know. How have you seen this changing parenting thing? You know, and now that you're raising, I think you're raising Gen Zs in your house. Yes. How are you navigating this world?
So, you know, one thing that I think with Gen Zs that is a bit different from us is that I don't think we are, you know, instilling of that or putting in that discipline of fear factor into our children is as prominent. I mean, our children are much more responsive, and I think they are. I don't want to use the word aware, but you know,
there's some level of awareness.
Yes. So there are a lot of things that I remember growing up that I don't think I would be able to get away with. They talk back sounds rude, but they have an answer, and they ask questions. You know, I think our generation will kind of, you know,
you don't ask questions,
seen but not heard. But here we get a questioning why we do what we do, you know, how we do things. So I think they are, and I think it's a good thing. I really do, because I think that it's always good to be able to question and to ask.
And I think also, of course, the way some of us were raised might not work in the world we're living in right now, where systems and structures have changed. There's a lot of liberal ideas, there's a lot of equality, there's a lot of justice, you know. And sometimes I also feel like many men are struggling because we are stuck in that world that favored us. And so we don't know how to adjust to this reality that women have a voice and they're running the show. And right now, you've seen the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics have just released a statement. Let me just read it. I found it very interesting. Of course, this is a very nuanced thing, because, you know, when the media writes things, they sometimes write them from a lens of, you know, anyway, I'll look it up. But it's like the new jobs, the new 100,000 earners,
the top
are now mostly women. Over almost out of the 10,000 who get into the labor market and earn that sort of money, I think almost 80% of them are women. You know?
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's just been released by the Business Daily. What would you speak to a young man who perhaps was raised in a conservative family, but then is in the city and is dating a Strathmore or a USIU babe or a liberal woman who was raised, you know, to fend for herself, and the traditional rules of, you know, subjugation and power and all these things might not work in this home. How do you see the power? How do you manage a home in a modern world?
I think it's the attributes. I think one has to listen, one has to be accommodating, and to be tolerant. I think in this era that, you know, we're looking at, even if we look at companies and corporations, there's a lot of, I think the term I hear being bandied around is collaboration.
I like that.
It's about working together. And I think it's much more fulfilling and it's much smoother than if you get caught in a power struggle, which I see even happen in couples. You know, you hear of this thing of the women earning more than men is I'm sure will cause disquiet in some of those
In some of the
those homes. But to me, it should be a boon. It's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
That now women are getting what they deserve. They're getting paid well, and hopefully this is a trend that will continue.
And I like that. I like what you said, collaboration, because I think previously when we were hosting Manspeqtive, we're only hosting women, we're only hosting men.
Yeah.
But at the core of my heart, really, I think that we cannot have men-only spaces and women-only spaces.
Yeah.
We might have them temporarily, maybe to deal with specific issues they're facing, like maybe gender, whatever, or business or specific niche. But ultimately, we must find spaces where we both meet and talk to each other, not at each other, because I feel like there's already a lot of bile that's going on between these gender wars, that it's feeling like, okay, you can't just, we can't sit down and talk. And I feel like people who are struggling a bit more, and maybe I'm wrong, are men, because we grew up in an era where, for me, where I come from, was called Way Zero. The man is the pillar. And then you come to the city and get a woman who went to McKinney, top international universities, did fantastic. You can never out-earn her if we were to look at merit based on, or you find a woman who's absolutely brilliant and you love her. But now you can't come up with the idea that of collaboration in the home, because the traditional software in you
can't reconcile
you can't reconcile that. I don't know, because I also see you do a lot of work with young people.
But I think a lot of it is mindset. I think this we see a lot of chauvinism. I was fortunate that I grew up in a family with a mother who was I like to joke, an overachiever, somebody who did not see limits and broke a lot of glass ceilings. But she said that it came at a price, because whatever you're breaking these barriers, it takes its toll on one, and you always wonder, did I do enough? And the work is the work ever done? But if we're starting to see, as this report says, that women are amongst the top earners, it's a mindset that has to change, especially for men. That this is the way things are now, and they will continue to change. But I don't know. From how I look at the world, I don't know if we're seeing a new world order, because I still see a lot of men in very dominant positions. So I don't know if it's something that will be seeded overnight, this power thing. But as I said, my view is different. If we can collaborate, then
I like that.
It will be a different,
because when you mentioned there are 100,000 earners, because I think many of us don't understand why we need affirmative action. For me, affirmative action is to correct the historical wrongs. So there's a population that has been subjugated or has been denied its rightful place for over 50 years in this country. And because of that, we need systemic changes in education, health, all these things, to try and mitigate the gap. And when we mitigate the gap, now when women are earning 100,000, I think men should not respond and say, oh, they're now earning, boy child has been forgotten. No, the idea is, so affirmative action is working. What can we do more? But still, remember the larger power dynamics. Men are still, it's still a patriarchal system. And still rest within, within that system.
And I don't think that's locally. I think it's
a global thing.
I really do.
All right. Before we go on a break, I asked you whether you played basketball.
I did. I did play sport. I played sport in school. When I went to university, I also played sport. And I enjoy. Even today, I still in different sporting activities. Primarily because of my age now, we do things that are age appropriate.
My goodness. Age appropriate activities.
I'm a realist in that when it comes to that. So I do. I picked up. I go to. I like to go to the gym. I work out. I like walking. I picked up this game called golf, but it's got its own complexities.
It's a rich man's game.
That's what my father mocked me when he was alive, when I started playing golf. And he told me, "Oh, son, now you're a rich man." I said, "Not by any standards, but let me try this game." But the good thing, it's becoming more and more accessible. I think, there's this golf course called Golf Park, which is a public park. It has given many people an entry into a game and that's where I learned how to play the game. That was previously an exclusive game.
Exclusive game of the business executives.
Yeah, with all
the
stereotypes you want to lump in there.
Exactly.
But no, so that is changing. I'm seeing younger people playing the game. So it's a game I play on occasion. I would describe myself really as a recreational golfer.
Okay.
I've not taken the game too seriously.
So anyways, I think when we're coming back to the second part of this conversation, I want to ask you what you've learned about family business.
Okay.
What does it come with to be born in an entrepreneurial family?
Yeah.
Of course, but also a very large family.
Yeah.
I want to know, and how do you craft your identity as a man away from that success and all that media exposure?
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, this is the first part of this conversation, Manspeqtive Africa. We are coming live from Kayana Create. It's a fantastic space which hosts women entrepreneurs. And of course, you can come here and get a co-working space and plug into a community that will support you and give you a lot of emotional support that you need in your journey of entrepreneurship if you are a lady. Of course, you can let us know what you think about this content. The hashtag is Manspeqtiveafrica, and there's an SMS line going down here. Let us know what you think about this conversation. Who do we need to host next? And of course, if you want us to come to your organization and you want us to come and host your CEO, we're more than happy to come and talk to them, or just a man or a woman or whoever is doing amazing work in the community. We'll be happy to come and talk to you. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is Manspeqtive Africa. The Manspeqtive is the Q. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can head over to every Wednesday at 8 p.m. We are live on KTN, which has now merged between KTN News and KTN. And now you have the old KTN, a home of entertainment, news, sports, and amazing content. Now it's one under one umbrella, the KTN that we loved.